Welcome back to Dawn of Man HP. We have a developing situation here with our barley. Quite an extensive amount of them. Looks like roughly half of the barley crop is diseased. Population continues to hover just under 100, but thankfully, as you can see, our food supply is fine. So I think we've still got that little bit of flax there that's proving more than enough. Once we added this field in, it's a sizable field, and on top of everything else, that really appears to be enough as we continue to escalate there. But we also have this particularly important moment. We're about to put this stone circle together. The town of Inception, bordering on a city now, is really just ready to get its own Stonehenge up and running. And this is probably the most impressive structure that you can build in Dawn of Man, all things considered. More straw. If you're paying particularly close attention, you might have noticed we're up to 50 wool in storage, and that's actually the limit. There is no item limit you can set for those, but they won't gather and store more than 50, so we're set on that. We continue to escalate our linen production. And there we go. We're starting to stack some of them on top of each other. We've got, sort of squared off arches going on here. And this is, I think, a pretty good representation, because it ends up looking, I think, quite a bit like Stonehenge. There's somebody around here. There we go. Right underneath that tree. They're still working on it. Of course, it's not really surprising that this takes quite a while to do. We've got somebody else coming in here. Are they going to help out? Or are they just walking through? Nope, they're literally walking through with their sickle on their way to the field. So, because it's, sort of planting season, or harvesting season, everybody is off doing other things, and not a lot of them. Whoa, there we go. And we've shifted these around a little bit, but not a lot of them working on this particular project at the moment. More people just walking through the site, and they in fact walked straight through the wall. It's pretty impressive, kid. Yep, straight through the stone, like it's not even there. Now you've come out from the tree here to be a little more visible as you do your thing. Maybe you're going to help? Looks like you are. So that'll speed things along a bit. Got these leaning up against mounds of dirt to keep them in place while they set up whatever else they're doing. And a little bit more complete. We've got some things laying on top. The trader that we're ignoring. And we lost a sledge. We'll need to deal with that momentarily. Now that's looking a lot more complete now. They've got these big entrances, 4 of them, all the way around. And then, of course, still the smaller ones on the inside. I think I can safely say that this is the longest construction that there is for any item that I have seen. And there we go. We get +3 knowledge for building it. It's ready to go. It's looking pretty impressive. Spiritual centerpiece of Inception now in place. And most of the harvest, except for, of course, the diseased barley that we're ignoring, has been taken in. You can see this has gone back up. We've also lost another person. We need to get that sledge rebuilt. But most of the harvest taken in, over 100 grain. Still have some linen in place. We're looking good. There's so much going on in Inception at this point that taking these big wide-angle shots tends to slow things down, but it's worth taking a look around, seeing how everything's doing here as we have hit the century mark. Just after building the stone circle, we appropriately hit the 100 mark in our population. And we have 5 more births apparently coming on the way. 20 young children of each gender. And so we're once again heavy on the younger generation. The summer project for Inception was to solidify the supply of timber. As you can see, we have cut down everything by the river that had already regrown once. We still have this one here, but then also moving forward, we've got one over here, and one just past these trees. There it is, and there's one going down. And then we moved this one away from these fields to get a better area for it, and you can see we've used a lot there. So we've got a lot more areas to pull from when it comes to that. The final advance for Dawn of Man in the Neolithic era is stilting, which we use for making bridges, such as this one. We acquired that recently. We really don't have a need for any other crossing points, I don't think, nearby, at least now. And under Build Transport, there it is. And it can be a little finicky to get it to place, which is why you can see we're at a bit of an angle here. If we come across this way, you can see, like, it's hard to... And there's, like, that one spot that we can do it. And there we go, and you've got the posts. And then it'll tell you we're going to need 10 logs to make that happen. So from here on out, if we look at our knowledge progression, we are simply moving towards the Copper Age. 30 knowledge required, we currently have 8. So it's going to be another one of those long, grindy kind of periods. And our food supply is going up. Our workload is going down. As the population increases, we built a couple more huts over here. We're looking very good. We just need to get through this, make sure we keep all the needs supplied, keep the animals going, be working on hunting more of the pigs, or rather capturing more of the pigs to be used in domestic activities, and keep the raiders away, and we'll eventually get there. There was a bit of action every once in a while in between the tedium, and that was on display here. You're going to get out of here, because we're about to hunt those. You go run away, if you please. But these cave lions are sort of invading our local lake, and of course they're a threat to our workers and small children, so we're going to deal with that. Here we go. That was quite a scrum there, but we survived it. Knocked him out. Got some chasing going on over this way. Dogs in on the act. You're gone. I think that one might escape. Let's see what happens over here. Dog's giving pretty good chase. But it's still running. It doesn't even care that it's being hit. It's just... Okay. So it looks like that one got away from us. But for the rest of it, we have secured the area and can move on. Approaching our next leap forward, we have another band of raiders. 7 of them over there. We can see we're well set up here. And now they're leaving the watchtower. But we've knocked out quite a few of them. Up, trying to sneak around this way, are we? Yeah, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's taken us a while to eliminate them. But on the other hand, our people seem to be doing quite well. We've got a band of them in here just standing around, and some of them actually shooting with arrows, and I think we're done. Indeed we are. So, we can reactivate, and then you can also see we can change what the combat preference is now. And of course, that's to keep your childbearing women out of the fight. So, we are now, having gained a little bit more knowledge from that, we are sitting here with a very stable food supply. We have, plenty of logs. We've got good workload situation. Clothes are good. Equipment is good. Pretty much we are set on everything that we need. And we're just waiting to boost up that last little bit to copper. Spring of a new year. It's the year 54. We've spent exactly 20 years in the Neolithic era, and we're ready to go copper. You can see 135 population. We've got room for plenty more. We have, more houses we've built down here, more stables. If we take a look at our population numbers, 83 animals. I'm keeping the sheep to about 20. They'll need to slaughter some of these because we have so much wool. I don't think we're ever actually going to need more than 20 sheep. The only reason I don't have it lower than that is because I want them to still be self-sustaining. You see, we've jumped up prestige-wise now to over half. Welfare is still pretty good, and enough pigs. And what that's doing is it's giving us plenty of meat supply and bones now. We don't actually have to worry about those at this stage. So, we are going to get copper. And yes, you're about to enter the metal age, fortify your settlement, etc. We're all set on that, but that's a useful warning to have. And the thing about this is we really need to get a whole bunch of new infrastructure set up now. Go into metallurgy, we'll get to the mine in a moment. Charcoal pit turns wood into charcoal, which could be our fuel for the process. And what I want to do is just put one of those there. And then a pit furnace smelts copper. And let's see, let's turn that facing this way. And I'm just using this as sort of an opportunistic area that just happens to be open. Then the metalsmith, we'll have them just facing this way. So if I need to, I can add more furnaces here, another sort of charcoal pit over there, etc. We, of course, have plenty of stuff to build all this with, so let's get moving on that. And meanwhile, there's actually a casualty of the particular setup that I'm using when I did the mod to flatten out the terrain. That's really unfortunate and also fairly ahistorical. Dawn of Man didn't get many things wrong, but I've got a bone to pick with him on this. So if we take a look around, yes, dog has died of disease. Over here, we are at present using this particular flint mine, just started. I think there's another one over here somewhere. Yeah, but there aren't very many of them. And just so happens that on this map, there is a way around this that we're going to do. But there is none of the copper, tin, iron mines, etc. We're actually not going to be able to extract any of it ourselves. But I think we can turn those lemons into lemonade by using the trading system. And the thing is, there absolutely would have been cultures that had to do that. Cultures like ours that are particularly strong in the, domestic side of things, agricultural, but didn't have a lot of ore resources around them. But I think it's because of the mountain situation. I didn't quite have enough mountains, didn't make enough rises, and so they didn't place a lot of flint mines, they didn't place any of anything else. So if we look at our progress over here, we've got a charcoal pit being worked on and also the pit furnace, both at the same time. Let's just swing around this way. And it basically looks like a big mound of dirt for the most case. In fact, in both scenarios there. But now they're getting a bit of a kiln. I like the detail with the cracks and whatnot in there. And there's our pit furnace. We're still working on this, though. Now it's looking a little bit bigger. Charcoal pit. And that isn't all that different from the process we talked about for early pottery a while back, where you're just building, you know, in this case, you're just putting walls of mud around it, dump all the wood in there and burn it. And we'll get to the charcoal making process in a bit once we're done with the game side of things. And here's our metalsmith location. We've got, yeah, it's going to be facing this way. And this is where they're going to be turning the molten ore into something useful. There we go. So we get a few points of knowledge right off the bat. And it's worth noting that our advances now are going to be 15 each. But largely they're just extensions of what we did in the Neolithic epoch. The copper is definitely the weakest in the game in terms of how much stuff you get and how dramatic of effect it has. Even the copper tools that you can make. We're going to get this set up here. Let's take a look at this. And let's see. Let's definitely go ahead and build all of these as we get, you know, the stuff in. These are all copper, and these are bronze, which, of course, we cannot do yet. But we can see that copper and bronze will be made here. And in those, all these tools are basically no more effective than the flint ones, except that they simply have more durability. For example, the knife has 2 for butchering, you know, the axe 2 for fighting, the sickle 2 for harvesting. And if we take a look at our crafter, we can see, okay, the flint sickle has got 2 for harvesting. The flint knife has 2 for butchering. So they simply last longer and allow you to not use flint. There are no major advances forward in this era, and that part of it is pretty much historical. Copper is probably not the first metal that people used. Most likely that was tin, which melts at 230 degrees Celsius, or lead, which melts at about 330, which is roughly the temperature of your average campfire. So it's not difficult to imagine how that would have been discovered. And we're probably talking roughly 6500 BC, early Neolithic era. So why did copper become much more common than either of these? One reason is just how readily available it was. In parts of the Mediterranean and possibly other regions of the world, at one point you could literally just pick it up off the ground like a common rock. Even today, there are a number of large open pit copper mines operating that are not necessarily in the mountains at all. Somebody just found copper ore and started digging a big hole in the earth to excavate it. Which is sort of why the implementation of having to dig a mine in the mountains as the only way of ever getting copper in Dawn of Man really rubs me the wrong way. Of course, there are also more traditional mining tunnels, such as this one in Israel. Hope you're not claustrophobic. But that often was not necessary, and rather self-evidently, people would only tend to follow the copper ore veins underground once they found it on the surface. Otherwise, you'd have no idea where to dig. Throughout most of history, mining copper or any other ore has involved a decidedly unpleasant and laborious process of fire setting. So named because you literally just make a fire as close to the rock as possible, heat it up, and then douse it with water. And the temperature difference causes cracks in the rock, and then you work at those with axes or picks or whatever, pry the pieces of rock out that have the ore in it you want, haul them to the surface and crush them, so on. Another big factor in copper's favor is that of the commonly available metals, it is by far the most malleable. Even without heating it up, small bits can be hammered into various shapes without breaking. Early work with copper and other metals was almost certainly done this way, making beads or pins or the heads of small axes. And while it has a higher melting point than tin or lead, copper does become flexible enough to make slightly larger objects if it's annealed, in other words, heated up to about 200 or 300 degrees Celsius. But to melt it, you have to get to almost 1100 degrees. And that you can't do with a campfire. This is where earlier developments in pottery really come into play, because kilns that had been built for that purpose could reach or exceed that temperature. We have ancient pottery kilns in China that it's believed got as high as 1300 to 1400 degrees Celsius. And more likely than not, this is how melting copper was discovered, by accident in a kiln built for some other purpose. To reach those temperatures, charcoal was usually used as a fuel source. Charcoal is made by burning wood in a very low oxygen environment, reducing it to mostly carbon at about a quarter of the original weight. Most basic method is here. Very similar to what's seen in Dawn of Man. A large mound of wood, and everything that's not around the outside of it is going to be much more compressed and low on oxygen. Kilns were eventually built for the purpose of improving process and further limiting the amount of air that could get in. And charcoal was used for many thousands of years, to the point where it was a significant factor in deforestation. By the 17th century, you start getting reports of shortages of charcoal because you're running out of wood in certain areas to burn. When we return, we'll be delving into the first bits of making copper objects, getting our first actual trades in order to make that happen, and seeing what incremental improvements are available to be made in the lives of Inception citizens during this epoch. Till then, thanks for watching, everybody.